Thanks everybody for having us. Super happy to be here. Just as he said, as he mentioned earlier, we are hiring. We are looking for the right people with the right stuff to work on the Spring team. Got a number of different openings across different portfolio projects, including our reactive runtime Project Reactor, our new function as a service offering that works on top of Kubernetes called Project Riff, and of course a number of different Spring projects as well. So if you have that particular itch, this might be the salve, the ointment that cures you, right? So don't hesitate to reach out to us. There's my email, and you can also hit the careers page if you like. Right, so a little bit about us. My name is Josh. This is my buddy Mario, colleague Mario. Is there talking? Yeah, look at that. It's awkward. Woo. Go away. All right, take down those coordinates. We're gonna go through a lot of stuff today. And as a result, what I want you to keep in mind is not so much what we type, so much as what we show is possible, right? There's gonna be a lot of things that we're gonna cover today, and all you need to do is to just keep in the back of your head what we've done, not necessarily how we did it, right? And we're gonna go through every little step. You'll see every nauseating detail explained tonight. But that said, the goal is not to remember everything, right? It's just to remember what's possible. And since you're all entrepreneuring and very intelligent, you'll be able to figure it out by following along at that code on that Git repository on that slide there. So if you have questions, comments, feedback, whatever, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're very happy to engage. We love feedback. We love to answer questions. It's our privilege and pleasure to do so. So if you have questions and you want to reach out, Twitter is a great way to do that. How many of you are on Twitter? I'm just curious. Twitter, 2018, Twitter. All right, the rest of you, get on it. It's the new IRC. It's a great place to be. It's where the developers that drive the open source that power your businesses are. And if you want to engage, you owe it to yourself to be there. So do. What about email? Anybody here using email? Email. Anybody? No. Well, very good. Moving on. I don't have a fax machine either, so it's fine. No fax. It's fine. We're in a post-Slack world. So Twitter. Now, this is my friend Mario. You want to introduce yourself, buddy?
Yeah, it's who am I command. So my name is Mario Gray. I am new to I'm a developer advocate at Bootiful. You'll probably see me around on Twitter. You'll see me on GitHub, IRC, if anybody ever uses that, and various other video game sites like Twitch, things like that. I've been programming Java for maybe 15, 16 years. Various enterprises, scaling from banks, video game companies, streaming. I've written CRMs a million times. I've probably have reinvented the wheel or two. I've done quite a lot. I'm pretty sure you know what Ring 0 is, the CPU protection. That's why I'm Ring 0 nerd on Stack Overflow. I've done a lot of low-level programming, tons of operations, system administration, virtualization, things like that. So I'm essentially a generalist all around the stack here, and I'm pleased to deliver information about what we're going to speak about tonight. I'll let Josh carry that away.
All right, thanks for that. And a little bit about myself. My name is Josh Long. I'm a Spring developer advocate on the same team as Mario here. I've been working with Spring on the Spring team for the last 8+ years as in an official capacity, and for years before that as a contributor and committer. And I'm a Java champion. I'm an open like Mr. Weber here. We're both fellow Java champions. That's a rare privilege. I'm an open source engineer. I've had the dubious distinction in my time as a committer and contributor on the various Spring projects of being, and this is, it's something, okay? It's something. I've had the distinction of being the #1 most prolific, most visible, most highly acclaimed, most highly lauded, #1 top contributor of bugs, but still number one contributor to the projects to which I'm a party. More bugs per commit than any other engineer on the Spring team over the 10+ years to which I've been contributing code. That's something. It's not the greatest thing, but it's something. I do training videos and I do books. So I've done several different training videos. They're on the Safari online marketplace. How many of you have access to the Safari online marketplace? I'm just curious. Safari is like an all-you-can-eat Netflix-style, buffet-style subscription to technical content. There are videos and books that you can rent. You pay one flat fee per month and you have access to all that stuff. It's a great place to go because that way you don't have to pay the full price and you get access to all this great content, which of course goes well beyond my humble sort of set of content there. And I'm also a book author, and I just finished my 5th book. This book is called Cloud Native Java, which a friend here, a community member, has right there in the front row. It's called Cloud Native Java. And the book is all about how to build applications that survive and thrive in the cloud. How to build applications that are meant to succeed in the cloud. And the book, of course, is written in terms of Spring Boot and Spring Cloud and Cloud Foundry, these technologies which are so fundamental to a cloud-native architecture these days. And we're proud of the book. The book I wrote with my other fellow Spring developer advocate, Kenny Bastani. The book took, I'm not proud, but it took a long time. It took a lot longer than we expected the book to take. We thought in and out, maybe 6 months, we'll be done like that, no problem, right? We thought 6 months, and you know, software engineers and estimates being what they are, we should have known that that was folly and that it would take a lot longer, but we thought 6 months. It didn't help that the subject of the book was a moving target and that things were progressing very quickly, but still, it took a little bit longer. It took 18 months longer than 6 months, and that wasn't great. That wasn't what we wanted at all. I'm here to say I wish it didn't. I wish it hadn't taken so long. We're proud of the result, but it took a long time. We thought that we could get that book out there as quickly as possible, and we were wrong. And you know, not for nothing, but it took a long time because we spent a long time. We spent a great deal of time deliberating back and forth. We had lots of sort of almost arguments. I'm not even going to say. I'm not trying to air my dirty laundry here, but this went back and forth between Kenny and myself and the editorial team at O'Reilly. We debated what animal we'd have on the cover for 18 solid months. And that delayed the book. And it was a worthy fight, right? Anybody who knows anything about O'Reilly books knows that it doesn't have anything to do, the success of that book has nothing to do with the content in the book itself. If you look inside those pages, you'll see it just says all work and no play makes Joshua Bill Boyd. Just check, you'll see. There's nothing there. Nobody even cares. It's everything to do with the animal on the cover. Anybody who's ever bought any O'Reilly book knows that. That animal that we eventually landed on, that we eventually settled on, is a blue-eared kingfisher. It's a bird that has ears, blue ears. Did you know birds have ears? Did you know that they're blue? This one's blue. It's a blue-eared kingfisher from the Indonesian Java Islands. So it's a bird that is indigenous or native to the Java Islands. And it's a bird, and birds, they fly. Yes? Often through the clouds. Yes, it's a bird that flies through the clouds that is native to Java. It's a cloud native Java bird. It's a bird, never mind. It's okay, it'll come. It'll come, give it time. It'll come. So there's that. And of course well, that's not great. Open Office. That's a glorious slide, but that didn't come out well at all. Let me see if I can, there. And of course, we work at Pivotal. And at Pivotal, we have a lot of great open source software. We care very much about the open source software, but let's be very clear. At the end of the day, while the open source software is a key part of what we're doing, and we work very hard on the open source software, it is not the main thing that we care about. It's not the raison d'être. It's not the reason that people like myself and Mario here spring out of bed. What we care about, first and foremost, is helping developers, community members, software organizations, customers, build better software faster, to see that software delivered into a production environment. And a large part of that, of course, is this need to sort of optimize human organizations. We see people moving to microservices, and this architecture brings organizational agility. It gives you as an organization the ability to go faster. And we can have a whole other discussion about how to implement microservices. But one natural consequence of this move to microservices is that testing becomes a bit more perturbed. It becomes a little bit more tortured, right? So tonight we're going to talk about testing in terms of the Spring ecosystem. We're going to do so starting from basics, first principles, and then going scaling up into the world of microservices. And so we're going to start our journey tonight working with Spring and the different ecosystem projects here on start.spring.io. How many of you know about start.spring.io? All right. the rest of you, welcome. Start.spring.io is my second favorite place on the internet after production. My first favorite place on the internet, of course, is production. I love production. You should love production. You should go as early and often as possible. Bring the kids. Bring the family. The weather's amazing. It's the happiest place on earth. It's better than Disneyland. But if you're not already in production, you can begin your journey here at start.spring.io. If you need inspiration in the early morning before a cup of tea or coffee, start.spring.io. And if your children are restless and can't sleep, start.spring.io. And if you suffer from indigestion after a long night of alcohol abuse and WebSphere, start.spring.io. We're going to build a new service today, and we're going to build just a stock standard sort of a web application babysitting a database. Nothing all that magical or fancy about it. We just want to have something with which to iterate. So we're going to build a new service here called a reservation-service. We're going to build an application that uses Spring's support for building web applications. We use JPA, which is the Java Persistence API. We're going to use that because I make terrible life decisions, so JPA. And then we're going to use H2. H2 is the in-memory embedded SQL database. It's an in-memory embedded SQL database that upon every single restart is going to lose all of its data. Every single time we restart the Java process, all the data that was in that H2 database will be gone, obliterated, wiped from the face of existence. All in a split second. All of it will be gone. In this way, it's very similar to MongoDB. You'll just lose your data all the time for random reasons that we'll never understand. Okay? And then we use Lombok. Lombok is a compile time annotation process that will allow us to make short work of sort of the tedium of Java, creating getters and setters and constructors and all that kind of stuff, okay? Now, having made those selections, I'm satisfied with those elections, but that said, were I not, I could click on, show the full version, and thereupon I'd be given a veritable ocean of checkboxes, things that I could elect to add to my application were I so inclined, but for now, for our purposes today here, it suffices to leave things as they are. One thing you didn't see me select is testing support, right? I don't have to do anything special. That's already going to be baked in, okay? Now, there's also these other choices down here. There's the choice of packaging and the choice of version of the JVM. Down here, there's some argument to be made about whether you actually have a choice, right? It's 2018, so really, the only choices you have here are 8 or 9, and there's some wiggle room there as to which choice, but 7 is definitely not a choice. It looks like you can select it. It may feel like you can select it, but you should not select it. It is 2018, and they have been more than 2 years deprecated, past their prime, expired, no longer supported for production, not safe, insecure, dead, not fresh, stinky. So we'll leave these choices as they are, the defaults as they are. And then here we have the choice of packaging, and I feel like this choice of packaging, this drop down here, is a bit disingenuous. It implies choice where there is no choice. The packaging drop down can be very confusing for a lot of people. They don't know when and where to choose which. So I'll do my level-headed best here now to explain when and where to choose which. If by some fluke of physics, some terrible tragedy of time-space, you should find yourself somehow transported to the distant past. Far, far, far beyond modern help, then choose .war. But if you're here with me in 2018, then choose .jar. This is a big part of my overarching and guiding personal philosophy of make jar, not war. You have choices. You have options, but you should do what works best for you, which is exactly what I've told you to do. So it's a win-win. We both get what we want here. I'm going to hit generate, and that'll give us a new zip file. Now, let's see what we have here. Go to the downloads directory. Okay. Generate again. All right. Now, we have a new zip file. I'll let Mario take us from here. Sir, after you. Probably. Did you say something about turning off the buzzer, turning off the phones? Seems like a reasonable thing to do.
I guess this is part of the process, waiting for IntelliJ to start up. And give it a moment. Hello, can you hear me? Oh, yeah. Let's, now can you hear me? Now you can hear me now. Okay, I'll speak a little louder too. Hi. Hello. Let's write some tests, guys. The first thing we're going to do is we want to begin with our domain. Did we speak about the domain? It's about reservations. We're going to write a reservation system backed by JPA. H2 is going to be our test apparatus. We're going to use it to spin up and spin down an ephemeral database. And I'll show you how to do that. Let's get started with something simple. Very, very simple. I can, what's missing out of here? In fact, all of the stuff needs to be gone. So let's remove that. Let's move the import. I guess let's rename this. We're going to create an entity. We're going to start with our entity, TDD, right? We're going to begin with just the things that we need to get a test started and no more. So I will begin by saying, I have an entity. Entity should construct. Yeah, I will. So do that. Make sure all of your imports are there so IntelliJ or the cat in the ceiling isn't watching. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to break some code first. This is typical. I think we do this a lot. We write code before we have it there. So what I want to do is I want to create a reservation, which is not there yet, and I have an error already. So I got to fix it. How do I fix it? Create the class. So I'm going to create a reservation. And that reservation is going to contain just the basic properties. I don't need anything special. I don't need like state, you know, I just need an ID, something to hold a database record, just to convey the idea that we're going to store state in a database, bring it out, maybe change it, or just talk to our database essentially. So I want an ID and then I want like a name. Now, I know what you're thinking. Mario, how am I going to store that? This isn't Node.js. This isn't JavaScript. You just can't write your, you know, your .h files or your headers. You're just going to give us like fields. No, I'm not going to do that. So what we want to do is normally we would do the setters and getters. Lombok prevents me from having to spend all my time writing code, and I love it. So if you haven't used Lombok, do it. God, what did I just do? Hi. There we are. Okay, no args constructor. Just give me a basic constructor. Give me an all args constructor. Now I've got two constructors. Yay. The next thing I want to do is I want to create grid as in setters. In order to do that, Lombok exposes something, the data annotation. That's going to ensure that my properties get field, you know, getters and setters, mutators, and accessors. And that's it. It looks so beautiful. It's like Scala or Kotlin. You don't have to do the work. It's there for you. So let's run this test real quick to make sure it works. Make sure I know the keyboard command. There we go. So nothing actually worked. I mean, nothing got tested because I didn't write any test code. I see what you mean. So what do we want to use? Assertions, JUnit. Does this convey the idea that it constructed just like the test asked? Yeah, right? I mean, that's so easy. Come on, like, what compiler is going to get that wrong? You'd never believe it. Like, you might be on a cloud somewhere, and the compiler is like, I don't know, from IBM 10 years ago. It's, you know, the old Black Swan compiler. So I'm using standard JUnit assertions. We're used to doing that. I'm going to skip ahead, and I'm going to mix and show you guys what Spring gives us in terms of testability. So we know we use your standard JUnit assert not null, assert equals, things like that. You can also use their matchers. So Spring gives you the matchers, the Hemcrest matchers. So let me show you that. And already there's something wrong here. There's no name, so I need to give it data. So it's simple state. I'm giving myself an ID because this is not an entity yet. So I have to tell it, you know, here's your ID, it's one, here's your name, it's Mario. And the test will assert that it got created, and it will assert that the name is set. And that's I suppose that's a scenario that you might test for, you know, if you're teaching people, which is kind of the situation here. So the next, after using matchers, there's the other one that's our TDD assertions. These are the ones that assert J exposes. And I like these better. They're more BDD. They allow me to ask better questions. So I can say things like, given my reservation and an ID, possibly, I want to assert that there is something greater than 0. How about that? It's greater than 0 long. Great is greater than 0. Hello. And that should work. So let us run. The Hamcrest is the second. Okay, so if you look at assert that, I'm using Hamcrest here. It offers a full, you know, complement of matchers. It's baked in. You know, use the one that you're comfortable with. I tend to use the BDD, the third one. So from the from this point onward, I'm going to use I will use assertions. I will not use Hamcrest or the standard JUnit. So that worked. So we know that my data class works. Let's move on. We know that we have a standard bean, a Java bean with getters and setters in it. The next thing I want to do is I want to give it legs. I want to put it into a database. And in order to do that, what is the operation? That ran. Did it? Yeah. Let's see. Where did it go? There we are. Yes. So test passed. We can go on. Let us do that. Class will be reservation entity test. Okay, this will test an entity. In order to test an entity, what do I need? I need, you know, well, I'm not gonna ruin it for you guys. Let's see, public void test. Oh, come on. Okay, so second thing is I don't know how to type. So if you guys know how to type, give me some good pointers here, really.
You use the Mac, don't you?
Oh, no, I love your keyboard, by the way. It's so bouncy, it's so springy. I have a new Mac, and those things are just, it's like pressing stones. So when you're pressing keys, your fingers feel the full force of the shock.
Weird, so at least converse it with 2 keyboards.
Mysterious. Are you guys watching? This is actually kind of fun. I just started a drinking game where every time my mouse pointer moves, somebody takes a drink. But I'm afraid that you guys might be torn up by the end of the night. So let's do something else. Let's look at my entity. Let's do something fun with it. One of the things I need to do is I want to be able to put my entity into a database, a test database, and bring it back out. So in order to do that, I need to introduce a test slice. With the test slice, and I might be introducing this a little early, but with the test slice, Spring will bring in just the machinery needed to get data in and out of a database and collapse that database at the end of the execution cycle. Yeah, I know that. Okay, so 2 annotations here, data JPA test. That is our slice. That's our JPA slice. It will just bring in JPA things, nothing more. No transactions, no web, nothing IO bound after that. So it's going to stand up those classes and allow me to talk to it. And let's get talking. The second, what it also exposes is this thing called a test entity manager. It is not a real entity manager. It backs an entity manager backs it, but this is more like a template that does the work for us. And this is a test-driven type of template. So what that means is I get 2 extra operations that I can test with, entity manager operations with. So it is called test entity manager. So test entity manager is the thing that data JPA test brings in along with an H2 database and a context for accessing that database. It puts it into the Spring framework with, the run with Spring Runner, sets up JUnit, sets up the Spring context, gives us our resources, and allows us to talk to a part of our stack. This part of the stack being the persistence layer. So what I'll do here is I will use the persist flush find function. Persist flush find will do what? It'll store the database, it'll flush the cache, flush Hibernate or your JPA implementation, and then find it. It'll fetch it back out in one call. So there we are. Now we can make assertions. So should I ask for an ID? Should I even check for that? I don't know. Yeah? Yeah. There we go. Okay, so it's not null. Okay, I think that's the end of that. Basically, I'm going to push some data into the database and get data back out and say, hey, did you commute the state to the database, the supposed database? And we're able to find it, and it didn't work. And the reason why is because can somebody actually name the reason why that didn't work? Okay, good, because that's why I'm here, right? Awesome. So the reason why that didn't work was I didn't do my JPA annotations. So, typically you would use entity and, but remember, we're doing TDD, so we're only writing enough code to get to the next phase of, actual production working code. We don't write any more code than that. You don't want to satisfy a requirement that you don't need. Unless it's keyboard. If anybody has keyboard, let me know. You'll find me out in the side over here. There we go. Now the test should, in theory, not crash his entire computer because it doesn't boot up Slack yet. Does it? Yes. Okay, good. Okay, so our entity, our test slice proved that I was able to get data in and out of a database, and I was able to find it. So with that one command, persist flush find, it does quite a lot of things, and so it's very powerful. You should start using that if you're doing the JPA route. And yeah. What's that? I do. Oh, guess what? Okay, so by default, yeah, what you probably want to know is, okay, well, I understand that it's testing it, and it's testing the entire stack. So this actually allows Spring by default to say output HSQL. Output your HSQL when you're executing the test. So I can show you what that actually means. So what we're doing here is when we import data JPA test, we're importing the Spring JPA show SQL. We're saying turn this on. You can ostensibly this can go inside of your application context, your application properties, and you can just say spring.jpa.show-SQL or show SQL equals true, and that's here. So this property does that work for us. It's already set up. I don't have to configure it. If you look into the example source code that we downloaded earlier through start.spring.io, it gives us a blank. So there we go. So this is the equivalent of what happens naturally or by default in the Spring JPA slice, test slice. What else is in here? So JPA, what does this slice include? Is it transactional? Does it configure cache? Redis? Will it allow me to connect to Redis? Will it allow me to do things like, I don't know, I'm going to start a transaction and then I want to see if this transaction works across my 3 beans. Hypothetically, I'm not going to demonstrate transactions here. We don't have enough time. However, the slice itself will do that. It will allow you to test things that are persistent bound. Transactions and caching are 2 of the concerns that we tend to deal with, right? Yes, okay. Let's see. Unless I don't know, does anybody do caching here? Are we Redis? Are we using like HBase for cache or something? Okay. Gemfire, is that a cache? Is that a normal? Geo. EH. Memcache. If you're in like on Amazon, you're using like Elasticache or something, and that's basically Redis and Memcache protocol. So once you wire those resources up, you can even test with that. Okay, moving on. We know that our entity manager works. We know that we can get data in and out of the database, and I've wired up things to the point where I don't have enough. I need more. I can't push to production yet. In order to get to production, I need to have a repository. I need somewhere to query and somewhere to write state back to the database and a business level. And so this is where some of my business code might come up. To do that, I'm going to write a new test. And are you familiar with the repository pattern? Spring exports repositories that have natural kind of language bindings. It basically does like, reflection. It looks at your method names and it's able to infer based off of things like, give me a second and I'll show you. Well, so, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. It's not even the jumped ahead. Oh. This is just a test. Oh, come on, keyboard. Oh, gosh. Hi. Should find. I'm going to test a method that looks for items by name. So this is a custom query that we'll test. And I don't have the bean yet, so let's start that. Let's say reservation repository repo. And let's see, that should be auto-wired. Problem here is I don't have the class. Let's create it. I'm going to, when you create interface, this feels wrong sometimes because it shouldn't be this easy. I don't know if it looks hard or not, but believe me, this is like serving ice cream to children. Only it's a database, and I don't have cavities to worry about afterwards, unless it's Mongo. But that's a different story. Let's continue with the crux here. So I'm going to create a method that returns a collection of reservations, and I'm going to call it find by name. How about that? String name. There we go. Okay, that's all I need to do to get an interface, a JPA repository exposed. The component scanning will find all the instances of JPA repository or just repository on the Spring class path. So you don't need to see that. So back here we have a bean. So repository will map to my entities, and I can do cool stuff now. I can say repo.find by name. Let's say Josh is in there. Okay. And clearly you're missing code, reservation, found. Oh, yes, it is. That might work. I'm pretty sure that you guys know that most of the stuff isn't going to work until I actually run the test. So I want to run the tests so that they think it's going to work and it doesn't. I don't know. Is that? Yeah, it's probably sadistic. Assertions, not asserts. Hi, come back. There we are. Okay. 3 standard assertions. Every time I write tests, I always assert that something is actually there. Something has an ID. Because, it makes sense that a database would write a ID back. Oh, come on. Hi. Oh, frisky keyboard. On the Mac, the control key is a little bit It's a little bit larger. Let's see. So, okay, well, insertions. What should I be introspecting? I should actually ask if reservations isn't empty. Because usually what will happen is I might not get anything back out of the database. I might get an empty response, and I know that I shouldn't have an empty response because I'm going to have data in the database. FYI. There. Okay. Will it run? No, it didn't run. It's clear why that didn't run. Okay, so what do we do wrong here? Run with Spring Runner. Add that. And then let's data JPA test. Put our JPA or persistent slice. The notion of slices is that Spring will export parts of your stack that are individually testable. So you don't have to bring in the web with JPA with messaging. You don't need all those things. You're really trying to test the parts that are invariant, the things that you've introduced that will change over time. And it's empty. And the reason why it's empty is because I didn't put data in persisted. The last time I ran it, the database got flushed. So here, I'm going to need to put data first. In order to do that, I can do something like, repo.save new reservation null Josh. Or I can use a test entity manager to do the same. The test entity manager is visible to the context, which you already understand this. Am I going too fast or too slow? Everybody fine? Questions? I'm about 50% done. Okay, so yeah. Break. Got it. Okay. What did I just do? I just told you guys the last thing that was repositories are tested. I built a repository. The repository looks like it's really simple. It's a custom query. It's my invariant. It's something that I want to test. When you're testing your custom queries, you make sure that those things work. You don't need to worry about the JPA apparatus. You don't need to worry about your database. Just get your code tested. That is my ambition here, is to understand the way my code works. And this helps me get there. The next thing I want to do is I have a database. I have a repository, but I don't have anything to show the world. So in order to do that, I need to create an endpoint, or maybe expose a web interface, a REST interface. That's a good idea. Let's do that. So what we'll do next is we will introduce the web slice. And web slices are like the persistence slice, only guess what? Hi. I'll just, keyboard it. Hi. Okay. The annotation is similar. We have data JPA test. We don't need it because we're not testing JPA. We are testing WebMVC and do you want to speak anything about, well, the WebMVC test slice will bring in my controllers. They're a way to basically tell Spring, hey, look, I'm not going to talk over the network. Don't spin up a server. Don't bring Tomcat into the picture. No TCP. We are going to talk directly to the code, and we are going to ship, requests to it manually. Well, Spring will do that. I won't. That's what the test slice does. And when I say ship, I mean communicate, talk, not ship code. You can't do it that way. Let's see. Oh, Better name. There we go. Oh, right. Okay, excuse me. That's the part that, yeah. So what's going to happen is I have something like, hi, there we are. So what will happen is I would ordinarily ask the web endpoint for a collection of things. It'll, marshal it out of JSON. It'll, talk to the web endpoint. You'll get a JSON response. Spring does a job of demarshalling data, turning it into an object. What mock MVC does is allows me to wire that up manually, locked. Oops. So why would I need to ask a computer, Josh, if I already know what the answer is? Like, why would I need to test this in the first place? If I'm mocking this out, I already know the answer is. It's like, what's your take? I'm writing a mock service. I'm writing mock data. Yes. Okay, my client's mock. The service is real. But what am I doing here? What is this, an anti-pattern?
No, you're using a mock client to call. That test slice is going to stand up all of Spring's web tier stuff. So all of your filters, your servlets, all of your components and controllers and controller devices and validated, all that stuff is going to be real. Spring's going to manage that all for you, but it's not going to start up Tomcat because we know Tomcat works, and that's not what's under test here. And it's not going to start up anything that isn't a web tier component like your repository. So it's going to actually exercise a real controller code, and that's the thing that's in the test rate, right? That's all we care about. It's going to make requests to the dispatcher server directly, though, instead of making actual open wires client communications.
Cool. What he said. Yeah. Okay. Let's run it. I wonder if it works. Is there that much magic in this? Is this Node.js? Do we just get things for free that we didn't ask for? No. Of course not. You actually got to tell it, like, I have a controller I want to expose. So let's expose the controller now. And if you guys have written controllers, don't, take it upon yourself to grab some water or something. This will take 2 seconds. We're missing stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to wire in the reservation repository and tell it, the only thing I really need here is the ability to fetch all of the data out of the database and serve it to the web. And in order to do that, we're just going to introduce a couple of pieces, like the reservation repository. There we are. Ooh, you know what? Do you guys like auto wiring, or are you more of a constructor injection? I love constructor injection. Yeah. Yeah. In the Scala world, that's all I did was I didn't even think of auto wired. It's all back now. Where? Ooh. Good one. You know, I did that for a reason, because I wanted to see if you guys were going to ask me to do request mapping. I had this talk earlier. I was like, what is de jure? What is the mapping de jure today? Is it request or get? So that's good. You guys are like get mapping. So many ways to skin a cat, and not all the time do we find the simplest way to do it. Okay, so one of the other reasons why this didn't work was obvious. There's no data in the database. How do I get database? Excuse me? What did he say? Oh, okay, I see. I have an issue with reservations, plural. Very good. Okay, well, glad we did that. That's operator error. Next thing is, well, it's still operator error, still. Yes, perfect. We want to load application context. Yeah. You know why? Because I'm missing what am I missing? I'm missing the repository. The repository hasn't been created, and I'm using the MVC pieces. I'm not using the JPA pieces, so it's not going to see JPA. I need to get it there somehow. There's a really good way to do it. Okay, we'll use Mockito. Does anybody, is there Mockito? Do people, I've met people who don't like Mockito, just saying. Like, I don't know why. Ooh, hi, mock bean. So the mock bean annotation, Spring will wire up a mocked version of whatever bean I give it, and it'll expose it to the context. So that's just mocked. There's nothing in it yet, so I have to give it stuff. And this is the part where the tester could get into trouble, because you can have tests that aren't certified to match data that they expect today. Mariro, because I don't know how to spell anymore either. Reservation for Josh. Hello. Okay, so with the semicolon. Okay, I think that might, yeah, that might compile. Yeah. Let's get rid of some of those imports. Yep. What was the change the test? Ask him. What was the issue? Yeah. It's not ordered, but yeah. Okay. Well, just change the text.
Get rid of Josh.
Okay, so now I have one. And let's see. Okay, there we go. Is the field name the same? Is it me? Okay, that worked. Oddly enough, that usually works. Sometimes because lists aren't ordered, it'll spit up whatever order it thinks. Okay, so that's a controller. What did I do? I created a web slice. Web slice stood up a mocked or just the pieces of web stack that I need to talk to the HTTP controllers, to do marshalling for my objects, and to get it back out. So it knows how to talk to an HTTP controller, make a request, a phony request, complete with status, headers, payload, JSON objects, and deliver it to my test as an actual server would. Now it doesn't. What it didn't do was it didn't mock out the data parts. I had to feed that manually, and that's the part that you could get in trouble, because hey, if you're writing tests 10 months ago and you didn't write that same test again as you're moving, which usually happens, you'll have data. You'll have a test that passes that shouldn't. So Josh has this formula, I call it, that tends to make things like one-to-one. So what you're testing is always going to be what you're, producing. And I will let him talk about the rest of that.
Okay. So thanks for that. So now we have we've got a good job. Absolutely. So we've looked at, we've got a service. We have an actual working service. It's fully tested and then it's green. And I think that's a great place for us to take a quick, what is it? 2 minute, 1 minute, 30-second break. 30 seconds. Everybody can get to the bathroom and back in 30 seconds. Is that true? Let's test it. Go. Whatever it is. How long is it? How long is it? 10 minutes. Okay. And then when we come back, we'll look at the client side, and things will get a little bit more complicated.